Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my books and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 102 of Breaking Step. Finding Dawn took longer than Tibs expected. The sorcerer hadn't been in their room, the inn, or training at the guild. So he cast his sense over the town and started walking. Dawn was the only person with corruption other than the sorcerers working on the building over the pool, so Tibs shouldn't have had the difficult time of it that he did. Again, he was reminded that, for as much as his sense had expanded, Craggle Rock had grown faster. From one side of it, he could just about sense the center, which was no longer the transportation platform. The town was growing unevenly, stretching more towards the midday sun than other directions. He sensed some with corruption, but they were too powerful to be his friend. Sorcerers taking break from the construction work, he decided. Where he finally found Dawn, and Tibbs cursed himself for dismissing the place out of hand, was the corruption pool. He knew how the concentration of the element muddled his sense, so he shouldn't have assumed Dawn wouldn't be there. Even the old Dawn was known to help out when it served him. And having the academy where he would do his research once he was free of the guild finish. Okay. Even the old Dawn was known to help out when it served him, and having the academy where he would do his research once he was free of the guild, finish what they were building here would certainly serve him. Really? Finish what they were building here. Oh, yeah, okay. Tibbs figured the old Don would have done only as much as needed to show he was helping, while his friend was dressed in rough worker's clothing and sweating while he hammered planks into place with others, much stronger sorcerers. The sight amused him a little. The element liked things to be easy. When he channeled corruption that first time, whatever seemed the easiest was what he'd done, careless of the consequences. Even his first encounter with one of their sorcerer, as he tried to swindle Dawn out of a pool he didn't own, had supported the impression bards sang when it came to them. Never trust someone with corruption as their element. They will trick you into doing all the work and give them all the rewards. Take care of any of them. Okay, that should be its own. Take care if any of them are on your team, but take especially care of the sorcerer who wields corruption, who is only less trustworthy than the rogue. Yet another reminder, as if he needed them anymore, that bards didn't sing about how things were. They twisted events to make good stories, and twisted how people thought of those in the songs in the process. Tibbs hesitated in calling out his friend. Searching for him after leaving the guild had moved the sun until there was only slightly more than a full handspan until it touched the horizon. He was hungry, and Dunn was working, and wouldn't it be safer if he went to another corruption sorcerer for help? One who didn't know so much about him, who would have an easier time believing the tale Tibbs would tell them? But would they be able to help him if they knew so little about what he could do? Would his question lead to questions of their own as to why he was so curious about an element he couldn't use? Or could he pass himself off as a runner with corruption and hope they wouldn't know Dawn was the only one? He could claim to be from outside and, Tibbs? Dawn called, waving. He spoke to another of the sorcerers before placing the hammer in a bucket and stepping around stacks of planks that seemed precariously balanced to Tibs. What are you doing here? He wiped his brow. Looking for you, but if you're busy with something you need to do to be part of the academy, I can. No, I'm not forced to do this, Don said, chuckling. I was tired of not getting anywhere with that book I got from the dungeon, so I came to help to have something else to think about. I didn't think sorcerers who worked at an academy would be hammering planks in place, Tip said. Don looked around and lowered his voice. You can sense they're all sorcerers? Tip shook his head. The pool makes it difficult, but there is a sense of a lot of elements above it, and I don't think workers would walk around so at ease over the pool. Don looked back. I hadn't considered that. But the reason they're doing the work beyond being a change of pace from so much research and something the acolytes in training can do to learn that even the academy isn't only that even the academy that even isn't only about that even that the acolyte in training can do to learn something the acolyte in training can do to learn that even the academy isn't only about sitting down, reading, and writing, is that the weaves need to be done as construction happens. It's well beyond me, but each plank has a weave that locks in place with those around it. It makes the building more secure and serves as a base upon which further enchantment will be added to keep experiments from escaping the walls. He looked at Tibbs, smiling. But as curious as you are, I doubt you came here to learn about what goes into building a sorcerer's academy. There was no avoid it anymore. You said you wanted to train me, and I believe your words were, I need to deal with something. The tone was severe. I've dealt with it. I'm glad to hear it, Don said far too casually. I'd like not to almost kill anyone the next time I have to use a lot of essence. Don watched him. I'm sure we'd all appreciate that. He looked towards the sun. Let me wash and change, then we can eat. Talk about how I expect you to work, and then we can settle down and exercise to help you gain control. Tibbs would bet telling his friend that wasn't what he wanted to work on. He'd have to come he'd have to come as he'd have to come at this far more indirectly than he preferred. All right, he replied, hoping he didn't sound as disappointed to Don as he thought. And I expect you to respect the schedule I set, Don said, as Tibbs finished his meal. Mez had joined them, ate, and left. Jacko was still in bed, getting over the corruption in his essence. They might have to pass on the next run at the rate the fighter was healing. Not just for showing up to the training, but in doing your exercises. He looked up at the approaching warrior. Tibbs quickly greeted them. Dawn. He looked around the room before sitting. The inn was mostly filled with runners. The tables occupied by others were townfolks or visitor, while Korsev's father had a policy that everyone was welcome. The runners had made sure the guards felt like they were the exception. He placed a pouch on the table that looked like a worn version of Jackal's. If he focused, Tips could make out a weave throughout the leather. He wanted to ask where Quigley had gotten it. Considering how much essence Stowe had said it took to make Jackal's pouch, he didn't think it came from there. Stowe also didn't make items that looked old unless told to. The warrior reached into it slightly further than the size implied and pulled out a ring. Was it because that was the only as deep as the pouch was, or because he wanted to avoid attracting attention? Not every team had something like that, and even Jackal was careful when using his in public. Should I bother asking how it is the dungeon is making those? Quickly asked, tapping the ring on the table. He turned the pouch toward Tibbs. If you hadn't told me what they do, I'd never have bothered with them. Tibbs shrugged, opening the pouch and looking in. Where he'd expected darkness, as with Jackal's and the bag Archer had provided him, the inside was more like the chest in the dungeon. Clearly larger than the outside, but the space was finite, even if he couldn't tell how large it was. And It was filled with plain-looking brass rings. How did the dungeon know to start providing us with food? Dunn offered, or weapons for Sebastian's assault. It must have a way to know what its town needs to survive, and if you think about it, providing items we need also serves as incentive to get the runners to go in, so it also benefits. Sure, that makes sense. Quick only glanced at the sorcerer before fixing his gaze back on Tibs. When do you need it back? He asked, tying it to his belt. Now, the warrior said. I don't have anything to put the rings in. Even if he'd been wearing his armor, he wouldn't have revealed its hiding place. Not that he was sure it could hold this much. It had held the promises, but those were paper. Were paper. I need to go back and check. I am confident that Tibbs has a pouch that hides what's in it, but not certain. Um, the first one got destroyed, but I'm pretty sure Stowe gave him a second one. Um, but yeah, I need to go back, and I think it's in the previous book. So yeah. Fine. Tomorrow then. I kept a few for my team to give to the people who matter to us. Tib nodded. He'd resigned himself to the runners thinking about them before the town, but they would have enough anyway in time. Won't Cross shove that down? Dawn hesitated, then smiled. Your throat when you give that to her? She can do whatever the fuck she wants to me after she put it on. There's too much writing on it. I really thought she'd made it clear she didn't care about your heart, Dawn said dismissively. Quickly leaned towards the server. How about you keep that corrupt nose of yours out of the stuff that isn't any of your business? And if you can't, do like that cleric of yours. Keep what you think of it to yourself. Noted, Don replied, grinning over the lip of his tankard. I won't comment on your impressive attempt at getting that woman to kill you anymore. The warrior pushed away from the table, grumbling insult about the sorcerer. Don't, Tibbs said, as Don opened his mouth. I don't want to know about them. I don't want to know about Mez and his girls, or anyone you know that's involved with someone else. You really don't like knowing about couples, do you, Tibbs? Don wiped the remaining sauce on off his plate with a chunk of bread. I can't not know about Jackal and Krosef, Tibbs replied darkly, earning himself a chuckle in response. That's more than I ever wanted to know about what anyone did with their special someone. You only say that, Krosef said, taking his empty plate, because you haven't found yourself someone, Tibbs snorted. How about you, Don? Chasing anyone? The sorcerer smirked. I'm not the chaser. I'm one of the heroes of Craggle Rock. And unlike Tibbs, I don't ignore those chasing me. In fact, there is a lady from the Rose Blossom Quarter that has been quite dedicated in her attempt to get me to. Can you just not? Tibbs glared at his grinning teammate. Since you aren't talking about how I need to do it anymore, maybe we can move on to the actual training. Your training? Kosef asked in surprise. I do train, Tibbs replied, eyes narrowing at the server. When your teacher calls for you, Kosef replied, or when something happens you hold yourself responsible for. Tibbs pointed up before even thinking about it. He isn't that badly hurt, he replied with a roll of the eyes. He's just enjoying having me having me tend to him. I won't be surprised when he jumps out all better the day of your run. Like you need an excuse to tend to him. Dawn said, grinning, while Tibbs shook his head. Unless something happened, Jekyll wouldn't be out of bed by then. What can I say? I'm a caring guy. I am happy to tend to whatever needs my man has. Tibbs grew serious. But the way he explained it to me, you didn't do it. And he doesn't hold you responsible, Don. It was that other person you'll want to watch who'll want to watch itself the next time Jackal finds them. Crow! His father called from behind the bar. Are you working for the inn, or did you join the guild when I wasn't looking? Work calls. The server left. Don't start with the everyone needs a special someone stuff. Tibs warned the sorcerer. I don't want to hear it. They don't have to be special, the sorcerer replied, grinning at the glare Tibs gave him. Are we training or not? Tibs raised a warning finger as he saw the mirth in Dawn's eyes. With a chuckle, the sorcerer stood. Come on, we'll need somewhere without people around for this. The wooded plaza was all that was left of the wood that had supplied the early material to build for the building. For the building of Craggle Rock. Someone had come and made trees grow, and they'd remain. And they'd remained. It was no more than 4 blocks in size, but once inside, there was an air of mystery many spoke about. A sense it was larger, that there were hidden things there. It wasn't until now, the first time he stepped in, that Tibs remembered his audience with darkness. Was it because of the element that the guild wasn't aware of it, or was it that they hadn't made the connection yet? We shouldn't be disturbed here, Dawn said, and we aren't going to start with so much essence you can lose control. These are basic exercises to sharpen your will and make it hard for someone to take control away from. Dawn, how would you go about making corruption hard? He asked as neutrally as he could. The sorcerer sighed. Tibs, now isn't the time. This is about practicing your control. Place it aside your unending curiosity for when we aren't working on something else. I will, but I'm just curious. I noticed that no matter how I will it, corruption never seems to do that. How am I going to use it as a weapon if... Tib stopped as Dawn stiffened. He turned and leveled a hot glare. How about I make you a deal, Tibs? How about, instead of trying to manipulate me, you tell me exactly what you're after and let me decide if I want to help you? If I want to help with that? Tibs looked away. Sorry. At least you're remorseful about it. Dawn ran a hand over his face. So, what is this about? I need a weapon. You have plenty of weapons, Tibs. Of everyone I know, you are possibly the one with the most possibilities when it comes to making weapons. Tibs hesitated. It has to be corruption. Dawn tapped his chin. Corruption isn't something that lends itself to a useful weapon in the dungeon, considering how it protects itself from that element. If your goal is to make those fights easier, you're better looking to improve something else, which means, how serious is this, Tibs? Tibs swallowed. Enough, I didn't want to involve anyone else. And you were hoping to trick me so I wouldn't know what you're planning. I didn't want you to get in trouble if someone asks what you knew about what I'm planning and they used light. Dawn sighed. If I insist, will you tell me? Tib shook his head. As much as he could see Dawn making this easier, he wouldn't risk him or the others. What if I make my help conditional on knowing? Again, he shook his head. Abyss, Tibs, whatever you're planning, if you need a weapon made of corruption, it isn't something you should undertake alone. I won't risk anyone else. You all have someone's, and I won't be the reason they lose any of you. Dawn stared at him. Is that why you don't want someone? Because you were always planning this? I'm a runner. Sto's going to beat me one day. I don't want to hurt someone the way losing Karina hurt me. Tibs, that's only until Epsilon. Then the guild is going to send me against something else. That's why you should... No! He didn't have to work at making his expression hard. I don't want this. If you want it, you want it. Jekyll has it. Mez is stuck with it. Even Kumdar has someone like that. I don't want it. I don't know why. Okay, Don. I don't know why, okay? I don't know why, okay? I just don't. I see Jackal and Crosef. I listen to Maz talk about his girls. No, his girl. Maz doesn't talk. He knows. Yeah. And I don't want any of it. I know you all think I just have to find the right person, but I don't want to. I don't want to find anyone because you don't want them. You don't want to hurt them when you die. Yes, he shook his head. No, I don't know. Okay, all I know is that when I try to think about someone, I'd look at the way Maz looks at Tandy when he thinks no one's watching, or Jackal at Krosef all the abyss time. I don't see anyone. I don't feel anything. And I'm tired of being told I have to look for that person. Tibbs stopped, panting. I'm sorry, Tibbs. I didn't. He raised a hand and Don fell silent. That doesn't matter. It's a me thing. What matters right now is if you'll help me without knowing what I'm planning. You don't have to. I understand if I will, but under one condition. I'm not telling I know, Tibbs. It's not that. My condition is that this is the last time. Is the last time you skirt your training. I will spend tonight, however long it takes, to help you etch this weapon you need. But come tomorrow, come any day after tonight, you are going to follow the schedule I have set. I don't care what else happens. I don't care what the dungeon does or how Commander Irdianim complicates your life. Those things will get shuffled around the training. Is that clear? Tibbs nodded. Tibbs, this is me as a friend warning you. Don't abuse my generosity. I promise, Don. I will train. I will follow what you tell me to do. I need to do this. But I also don't want to be a threat to the team either. Okay. Don let out a breath and looked around. For what you need, we can't do that here. Come on. I know a place that should keep the surroundings safe from what we'll be doing. And that concludes chapter 102 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is up on Royal Road for free. If you want to read ahead of that and support me in the process, that is on my Patreon, where we are about 20 chapters ahead. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.